Another incredible set of Ask LOJ questions. When does Lowry make the jump? How is Keyonte's defense? What is his ceiling? Plus, we look at a bunch of other fun questions and some around the NBA. Yes, we'll touch on Draymond Green. It's all next on today's edition of Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Sorry, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Today, it's Ask LOJ, your questions, the everydayers coming through in the clutch. Great questions. Again, today, we'll discuss some sideline reporting that got asked about. Can Lowry make the jump? Is Keyonte a good defender? How do the tiebreakers work in the tournament? What trade can the Jazz make that would get them on the winning side of things again? What is Keyonte's ceiling? What skills are Taylor and Bryce trying to add in the G League? Rookies, second year versus third year. What happens when Walker returns? Why don't we shoot well? Which might not actually be true. And do the Clippers still have 240? A great question about leaders and some questions about Draymond. We're all going to try to get to all of them today. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you very much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. To the everydayers, you're the best. You're what makes us cook. Thank you so much for doing so. Hit the bell button. If you're watching on YouTube, because we premiere the show every single day, if you hit that bell button, it will tell you when we launch and we're there. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you very much. All right, let's get right to your questions and right to your stuff. Before we do that, I do want to point out a few quick notes. I spent a bunch of time watching Front Row, Holly Rowe's new podcast on Jazz Plus. She sat down for 50 minutes with Ryan Smith, his story, his vision, what he wants to do with the team, how he believes in Utah. Some really fun talking points there. So if you get a chance to watch that and then Shoot Your Shot, I think that's what it's called, with Will Hardy, super fun. So super fun. Shoot the Shot with Will Hardy. He played, I watched it with Lowry and with Colin. He's done it 5 times so far. There's more to watch. So great content at Jazz Plus. Plus, you can get all your Jazz games subscribed for $125 a season, which is less than $1.50 a game. So go grab it. Great numbers on that. It's kicking butt. People are loving it. So make sure you go get your Jazz Plus. All right. First question coming in. What does Lowry make the jump to a top 20 player in the NBA? That's from Jazz Coug 77. So I think Lowry's making a jump. I think he's better than he was last year. We did a show, Everydayers Know It. We did a show this week already on that. There's two things, and his question really specifically was, how do we get Lowry to 20 shots a game? So there's two things actually that I think have to happen for Lowry to get to 20 shots a game. He's only gotten to 20 shots, I think, once in the last 5. And actually, the question was asked, like, what can the Jazz do? I actually think it's what can Lowry do. So some of it is Lowry's ability to play isolation. Last year, early in the year, Lowry played maybe a isolation a game. Very, very little. Then as the season went on, the Jazz increased his isolations and the teams got used to it, and his success rate went way down. And you've seen Will give Lowry the ball some in the kind of short post or right at the free throw line. Right top of the free throw lines where Philadelphia uses Embiid a lot. You're trying to get him 1 or 2 dribbles to the basket. He's got to learn how to go quickly. He's gotten 15 isolations so far this year. So he's getting about 2 every 100 possessions he's on the court. That's a pretty low number. In fact, it's worth me checking for you where that ranks. Like, obviously, Luka's the highest at 17. Jordan Clarkson does about 9 a game. So Lowry's isolation play, which puts him at about 170th or so in the NBA in isolation chances. If he's going to get to 20 shots a game, that's really where that's where he's going to get it, right? Like, I mean, even Keyonte's got like 1.3 isolations a game. And I think I said that Lowry's 166th out of NBA players in isolation chances. So like per 100 possessions. Like, so Isaac Okoro is Cam Johnson, guys that should not be doing Sadiq Bey. This is actually Lowry's gonna have to self-create this. The flip side of that is Lowry also in some of those circumstances has to create for his teammates, because what's happening to Lowry right now is when he gets in that circumstance, he doesn't have any room. So I actually would tell you that I think the things that we're talking about in regards to Lowry getting 20 shots a game, which would be terrific, and that is probably his next step. It's a great question from Jazz Kook 77, are Lowry-based. They're Lowry-based. And his development, his ability to play ISO, his ability to do that. But, if you look at the top 30 isolation guys in the league, they've run 55 this year. He's run 15. So it's just not really what we do, but it's also not his game. Like if he was good at it and could do it well, there's no reason we wouldn't be playing isolation, if that makes sense. Okay, great question. The questions are always great. This show is always so good on things like that. Gilad, I believe, who is from Israel. So thoughts to you with all that is taking place there and the unsettled world that you're living in. Is Keyonte a good defender? So, no. But that's because he's 20 and not that strong yet. So, like, I was trying to figure out if I was going to try to couch this in some way where it didn't sound nearly as kind of like, like mean or like, I didn't, like, to me, that's not a shot, I guess is what I'm saying. I think I haven't looked today. I think his defensive rating is the lowest on our team of players, but he's not brutal. Okay. So it's not like Trae Young, who, if you watched yesterday's show and we talked about the way they have to hide him on every play. I mean, it's not that at all. And I think he's got a chance to be as good a defender as most guys in the league, where the rules just never really give you a chance to defend. But like, is he a good defender right now? No, he doesn't know how to navigate picks entirely, though he does a pretty decent effort. 2, he's not particularly strong, and he doesn't know the tendency of players. So there's really no way at 20 years old you're going to be a good defender in this league. But I do think but I'm not worried about him defensively. Let me put it that way, right? So yeah, Keyonte's defensive rating when he's on the floor is a 121. It's the worst of any player on our roster. Not surprising at all. So the answer to your question is Keyonte a good defender? No. Does Keyonte not being a very good defender worry me or bother me? No. Do I think he'll get better and understand more? Yes. And as he gets stronger, he'll get way better. So I think I really think that's kind of my feeling on this more than anything else, is I wouldn't particularly worry about Keyonte defensively, but if you're wondering if he's like going to help us, young players rarely help you win games. Now, Keyonte has seemingly settled us and made us better the last few days, but young players have rarely done that. Next Keyonte question came in. Let's see. A bunch of questions on this level, actually. What do I think Keyonte's ceiling is? Octavio, we'll give Octavio an everydayer. The kind of the lead question here. So, there's some people who want to say that Keyonte could be Jamal Murray. That's like the upside. Leaf Tulane talks about that a lot. And that's a high praise. Let's go with it. It's kind of awesome if he could do that. We'd be super pleased with that. That is the peak. So if you ask what his ceiling is, that seems to be it. To me, Jamal Murray is a top 15 player in the NBA, and is really like won an NBA title. And I thought if he came in shape this year and didn't have some of the hamstrings issue, I actually thought he could have an MVP campaign this year. I thought he was one of the players who, I think we think of him probably in the top 15 player in the NBA, right there with Donovan and De'Aaron Fox and Anthony Edwards. And I thought he probably could make that jump. So when you look at like the next level, like Darius Garland's ranked the 34th best player in the NBA. This is on the Ringer ranks. Drew Holiday was like 37. I don't think there's a lot of similarities there. LaMelo's 45. Desmond Bane's 44. DeJounte Murray's 47. I think DeJounte Murray's overrated because he's not that efficient. Fred VanVleet's top 50. Like, I think that's where we hope Keyonte George can go. Derek White is an underrated 56. So, if I'm looking at this, I probably I think Keyonte can become a top 50 player in the NBA. And then the question is whether or not he can become a top, that's like probably tier 1. And then, then can he become Jalen Brunson, Trae Young type off? That's elite level offensive stuff. So that would be a big jump. So the first one is Jamal Murray, which is top 15 player in the league. And that's his ceiling. Okay. So your question, Octavio, was what's his ceiling? Now, I'm going there. What's his likelihood? I think top 50, which is amazing. And maybe he can get to top 30, which would be great. That's my feeling on that. All right. Still lots to come. What do we do with Walker's return? What trade can the Jazz make for them? What skills are Taylor and Bryce looking for in the G League? We're just getting started on Locked On Jazz, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by my good friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. As you guys probably know, I hope you know, because it means you've listened to the show a few times. I'm a Hyundai driver. It certainly started because I got introduced to the Murdochs and great relationship with Blake and Tyson and Ben and the family and realized who they were as people. But then I did the research. And when I did the research on the Hyundai, what I found was for the price, for the bells and whistles, and for the safety features, there was nothing that matched it. So then the next question is whether you like the look. That's really up to you at that point of whether you like the look. But I would suggest you go take a check, because if you're looking for a car right now, the Hyundai is going to hit it's going to hit the 0% for 5 years. It's going to hit the award-winning safety features. It's going to hit the price point. It's going to hit all the things you want out. We own the Ioniq, and I'm not making this up. So we own 2 Santa Fe's. Each kid has one. We own the Ioniq 5, which I love. Drove it yesterday. Had a great time with it. I'm yearning for the Ioniq 6. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai. If you're going to head down there, either to Provo or Linden or to Logan or to 4646 South State Street, please give me an email at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com, so I can set you up with your VIP meeting with our good friends over at Murdoch Hyundai and give you what every everydayer deserves, which is that VIP meeting at Murdoch. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Betterhelp. Betterhelp is performance enhancement for your brain. Like, that's how I like to look at therapy. Performance enhancement for your brain. Betterhelp is an online chance for you to benefit from therapy and to do it in a manner that's easy, convenient, and frankly, I think the biggest deal with Betterhelp is if you don't connect, you're not stuck to that therapist and feel like you are now have to go to someone you don't really like, and it's exact opposite. It's online, it's convenient, it's flexible, it's suited to your schedule, and of the brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you switch therapists at no additional charge if you don't click in. So find a bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. The brain can get in the way. Thoughts can be detrimental. Issues in life can perk up. So therefore, this is a chance for what I like to phrase is performance enhancement. So, in this time of year, frankly, performance enhancement or at least coping skills are pretty darn important. Go to BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. And to the everydayers out there, you rock. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. If you have not heard, we have launched the first ever national sports 24/7 stream on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It's awesome. Like, I just finished Locked On Fantasy Basketball with Josh Lloyd. Got a recap of last night. Now Tony Wiggins and David Harrison of Locked On NFL are breaking down the Ravens' 34-20 win over the Bengals and some Week 11 predictions. And Tony Wiggins is the most enjoyable person you'll ever listen to in your life. So go check it out at Locked On Sports Today. Subscribe on YouTube. It's a 24/7 stream. It's also going to be available on a bunch of other places. News On app it's available on. It will be available on Amazon and Samsung, the first ever, so be a part of history, the first ever national sports 24/7 stream. That's available at Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. You can throw it up on the TV, off through your Roku, through YouTube, just have it in the background. They're not screaming and yelling at you. They're actually giving you good sports information and covering the biggest stories from a local experts. It's pretty great. All right, let's get back to your questions. Lots of questions about Walker's return. So Walker did not have a great open to the season. So let me start there because I got a bunch of questions about Walker year 2 versus year 3 and whether sophomore slump. So here's my general take on rookies. Those rookies that have a good first year rarely have a good second year or rarely have a jump their second year. Let me rephrase that. So the rookies that are kind of great their first year, they actually do the same thing their second year, and then they have what's called the sophomore slump, and they go down a tiny bit, and then they make their jump in the third year. So like Jalen Williams, Oklahoma City, who was just brilliant, is kind of right on where he was. He's terrific. He's playing 32 minutes. He's averaging 17 points. He's up from 14 to 17. He's shooting 52%. He's taking 1.5 more shots. He's shooting basically the exact same from 3. He's taking 1 more free throw. He's like made a subtle little move, but everything's really similar because he was brilliant last year. Paulo Banchero, who won Rookie of the Year, like his shooting percentage is horrific, but it was for the second half of last year too. And if you look at him right now, he's actually playing the exact same amount of minutes. He's shooting a little bit better this year. His three's actually going in. He's actually down a point a game. He's actually probably better and more efficient, but he's kind of the same. Walker's in that category. Walker had such a good second half of the year last year once he started that he's actually probably just going to be the same as he was last year, and then he makes his jump in year 3. However, that seemed to be wearing on Walker. Walker did not seem like he was enjoying himself. He did not seem to have the kind of zest that he could have been tired from the Olympic experience, or the World Cup experience, which could have zapped him a little bit, frankly, because he didn't play as much as you can say that was fun and interesting. It's not great to not play. So he did look like the burden of being an NBA player had hit him. He also was hurt from like the third play of the game, all from the season. On the very third play, like that injury happens right away. So I think that, a lot of that plays into it. What do we do with Walker is kind of the question. Well, here's the answer. He's part of the cornerstone of the Utah Jazz. So when Walker comes back, Walker's starting. I would be stunned if he's not starting. Walker is a cornerstone piece. We're not winning a title this year. Even if our best case scenario is we make a play in this year, we shouldn't be like not playing Walker, who's proven he's a viable NBA player, who Will Hardy has said can be a cornerstone of a defensive team moving forward, just because like the way our roster lines up, which isn't going to be our roster the day we win a championship, is matches. So Walker is going to start when he comes back. So then the question is, does Ochai or John Collins go to the bench? I think that one's super interesting and going to be super complicated for Will Hardy. My answer would actually be John Collins. And an early substitution of John Collins back at the 5, probably playing with Kelly Olynyk, Lowry on that early substitution out, maybe even Walker going out early, and having John Collins play the majority of his time as the backup center with Walker. And then if John needs some other time, he can play some 4 and things of that nature. But John, to me, looks so much better as a starting center offensively, and defensively, it just forces a very big-time collective unit to get that done. So that's my thought, because I just feel like Ochai's a really good settling force. That's a good spot for him. He does a lot of things. But again, remember when I did the lineups to start the year, I had Ochai play 48 minutes the first time. Oops. It's 44. But like, I just think Ochai is a unique player we don't have a lot of and becomes really valuable to us. But that is a tricky one, right? Either John Collins or Ochai have to go to the bench when Walker comes back. But I would suspect that when Walker's ready to come back, he moves back in the starting lineup. He wasn't like that poor that you suddenly have lost faith in him and his future. He looked like the burden of the NBA had clicked in, frankly. That was my reaction to what I thought about Walker this year, that the burden and the pressure of the NBA. It's also like, we could dig into this. I think it's the most fascinating thing that's out there. Walker's 1 year older than my son. So literally to the day. So I have maybe a different perspective, but you know what? Like some of you probably don't totally agree with this, but you know what 22-year-olds are supposed to be doing? They're probably supposed to be seniors in college. They should be getting the, like, I mean, I don't want to run through it because we have kids that are listening to the show, but like, and some of your college experiences, if you're down south from where I am, is not the same as what my college experience was. But like, I was kind of doing a lot of stuff at 22 that I probably wasn't going to be doing much more in my life. You know, selling Buicks, if anyone knows what that means, like, okay, that's like the last time you probably ever should sell a Buick in your life. Like, I was playing around a decent amount at 22 years old, being fairly frivolous and loose and making great friends and having incredible experiences and doing stupid crap and rolling in at 4:00 in the morning and just being a goofball and learning what I thought was right and wrong and good and bad and making new friends. Like, I would guess that Walker hasn't made a friend in a year. Like, I know that sounds sad, but that's actually my experience. And that's not about Walker. I had this, I remember Gordon Hayward told me, like, I remember asking Gordon Hayward, like, have you made any friends? It was like 3 years into his NBA career. The only friend he had really made in that period of time. He met up with Robin and they had started dating at this point, and then they got married. And then his only other friend that he really made in this time period was a guy he met gaming who didn't know who he was. So this is not an easy life on Keyonte George at 20 and an easy life for Walker Kessler on at 22. And it wears them out at some point. And frankly, it's not a life that 20 and 22-year-olds should be living. Like, yeah, it's freaking great. They don't have to worry about a mortgage payment for their entire life. That's super cool. But actually, you know what's super cool is selling Buicks and being a fool. And frankly, having $5 million, which is what Walker has at the end of this year from salary, maybe a little more, is not actually a benefit to anything that you need in your life at 22 years old. It's really awesome at 40, probably. But at 22, it's not really something that helps you get along with life better. You don't need that money. None of the things you're doing in life are that expensive. And all the things that are actually important that you're supposed to be developing in your natural progression as a human to become a happy, functioning adult actually don't need $5 million. In fact, $5 million inhibits every single one of those. So I think there just has to be a lot of understanding. And we're going to see it with Keyonte and Taylor and Bryce and Walker and Ochai. And Ochai is unusually mature, but Ochai is also 24. Ochai might be the most like mature kid on the planet. So maybe Ochai didn't sell Buicks at 22 years old in his senior year at Kansas, but he spent 5 years in college. So Ochai's 23 and he's a young adult and he's actually doing developmentally what 23 and 24-year-olds should be doing, which is moving into a workforce for the first time in your life with different age people and learning how to get along. That's the natural development thing to do at 23 and 24 years old. And that's what Ochai's doing. His is like a little bit more online. But Keyonte, Taylor, this is not natural. So I don't know. That's always my opinion. I think it's fascinating. I think it's more fascinating when I have a kid who's 21 and a kid who's 18 who I'm watching go through life and seeing what they're doing and trying not to see what they're doing and then watching what these poor guys are doing. So that's just my thought. Somebody out there is probably going to tell me, well, he's making $5 million. Okay. Yeah. Take that in your pipe and smoke it. Because, yeah, it's awesome when you're 40. It sucks when you're 20, actually. It means you don't make friends or you don't know why you trust anyone. Point of that was not that. Point of that is he will start when he comes back. A lot of questions about our shooting. You know what? Our shooting's pretty good, which is, I'm not sure why, because we don't have natural shooters. So this is a tribute to Will Hardy's offense and what they've built and what they're doing. But if you actually look, going into the other night, this was really interesting. We are 29th in the league in off the bounce three-point shooting because we really only have Keyonte George and Jordan Clarkson, and Jordan Clarkson is not efficient at off the bounce three-point shooting. However, from a team standpoint on catch and shoot and three-point shooting, we were actually third best in the NBA, taking the second most, which is really a tribute to our offense that we're now taking the third most. Memphis takes 31. Brooklyn takes 28.6. We take 28.5. We're making 40.4% of our catch and shoot threes. The only team that's better is Indiana. So funny as it is now, some of this might be because our guys aren't respected, and so or they're being left open. But like we're nailing our catch and shoot right now, and it's really helping our offense. Now, what we don't have, and hopefully Keyonte can bring a little of this, is we really have absolutely no catch and shoot off the bounce dribble three team. Boston takes the most at 16 a night. We're in the middle of the pack of attempts at about 8.6 off the bounce threes a game, but we're not good at it. In fact, I think the last, I'm overriding my computer right now, so you're probably glitching a little bit with me. The Dallas is the best because of Luka at 43%, and Sacramento is at 42%, I think, because of Kevin Huerter. We're 26%. We're 29th in the league. So we're the second best off the bounce three-point shooting team in the NBA, and we're the second worst off the bounce three-point shooting team in the NBA, and we're the second best catch and shoot team in the NBA. Make sense of that, because I can't. I actually can. It's two totally different skills, and it actually matches our roster. So our lack of shooting and our lack of spacing, we're actually taking advantage of it. We're getting a lot of catch and shoots. We're getting a good amount of threes, and we are getting and we are making them. Which should spread teams out a little bit in the process. My screens have gone completely black, which makes me wonder what has just happened and whether or not I've lost the entire show or not, which will be interesting to see. So I will continue, though, and see whether or not I come back and we're all right. Everything in my computer just went dead black. As though it somehow just froze up. So hopefully you did not lose me in that process, though I'll be relatively stunned if you did not lose me in that process. All right, we still got more. Some Draymond. I'm going to comment on Carissa Thompson's comments about being a sideline reporter, really as much as anything out of respect. Huge to my wife, who was a great sideline reporter in her career. Huge game tonight coming your direction with the in-season tournament. So I hope you're fired up for that. YouTube question of the day is, does the in-season tournament make today's game bigger to you? Does today's in-season tournament make the game bigger to you? We'll come back with our final things, what to watch for in the G League as well here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you all in part by our friends over at Game Time. If you're looking for a ticket and you want to go to a ball game, Game Time is your answer. It answers all the questions. Like when I'm buying tickets online, I want to know where my seat is. I want to know that I'm guaranteed that I'm going to get the best price. And I want it to be easy for me to get my seats. And Game Time does all three of those things for you. So Game Time gives you a spot for your seats. I actually used Game Time to buy my pink tickets in Indiana and use Game Time in all the fashions I'm talking about. Easy to get to seats. They came to my, they just came to my phone, and I was able to just activate them while I was at the arena. And I bought these an hour before game time because I was trying to get the best price available. So these are all the reasons why Game Time is your answer. It is the official ticketing app of Locked On Jazz as well. So make sure you jump aboard and get involved with Game Time. Today's show is also brought to you by, by the way, with Game Time, you can use the promo code Locked On, and you get, I think, $20 off. I got to check it. Sorry. And as I mentioned, I'm having massive computer issues right now. And dyslexia never kills. It just confuses. So if I give you the exact number right now, like I doubt it's $02, but it could be. No, it's not. I think it's $20 off your first purchase. So make sure you go check that out over at Game Time with the promo code Lockdown. Prize Picks is your daily fantasy answer for fun and enjoyment with your daily fantasy sports. You're not going up against sharks or other people. You're going up against just you choose more or less on points, rebounds, whatever it might be, or you can intermix NBA and NFL. Plus, you're guaranteed if somebody gets hurt that you're able to bounce back and not have to lose your opportunity, because Prize Picks has the rules for you that allows those players to be reset. That's what makes Prize Picks the most popular daily fantasy game. And right now, you get $100 back with your bonus bets with your first entry at Prize Picks. Use the promo code Locked On at Prize Picks. All right, continue with the questions and hoping that we actually have a show that's up and running, because this was really quite something to watch my entire computer just go black there for a second. What are we watching for in the G League with Bryce and Taylor? So it's individually different for each of them, I would say. So Taylor, you want to see handle. I actually think they think Taylor's going to be a 3 out of 4. So you want to see handle. You want to see some self-creation. I think you want to see feel. Like when I watched him in college, I did not think he had a good natural offensive spacing feel to the game. So understanding the offense and the spacing. Physicality. It's not something he's played with a lot of. And then the G League, Micah Potter shared with us that the G League's actually faster than the NBA. So learning how to make decisions in play and speed are the Taylor Hendricks issues. For Bryce, I think number one is actually just conditioning because of that knee injury. He just has missed a lot of time and been limited. Number two is defense. And number three is playing with teammates. So he was a very, very high usage player at Ohio State, which is a very, very hard way to live. And in the NBA, you're probably now going to be the fifth best player on the floor all the time. So how do you make sure that you actually are, a good enough player or you can play well with your teammates? It's what Ochai, who was a Final Four MVP, has learned how to do really, really well and makes him a valuable player. And that's what Bryce has to learn as well. So really, those would be the G League Watch questions. All right, a few other questions that came in. I want to make sure I get to all of them. How do the tiebreakers work in the in-season tournament? So the first tiebreaker is head-to-head. But let's say that the Jazz lose to the Suns tonight and then beat the Lakers. And the Lakers go to 3-1 and the Suns go to 3-1 and the Jazz are at 3-1. Then there's no head-to-head tiebreaker, which would be the first tiebreaker. The next tiebreaker is point differential. That's what will determine it. If point differential is the same, then it's points scored. So the Lakers' blowout win over Portland the other night was an important win in in-season tournament play. If the Jazz win tonight, they go to 3-0. The Lakers will likely be 3-0 as well. And then the Jazz and the Lakers would match up Tuesday night for, I think the Lakers at that point are just 2-0 and the Jazz would be 3-0. The Jazz win could be, if they beat LA and LA only looks okay, right? They got smoked the other night. So if the Jazz could upset Phoenix tonight, Phoenix comes in, Devin Booker's likely to play, Kevin Durant likely to play, Bradley Beal's questionable. Phoenix, when they've got it all running, they look really good in their last outing. Prior to that, they've just been a disaster in fourth quarters, 30th in the NBA in fourth quarter offense. And Durant just playing a ton of isolation late in games, almost like it's like offensive until you look at the other players he has to choose from. Now, when he has the Devin Booker back, and frankly, like Durant's awesome. So some of this is like, yeah, well, he's playing isolation because he can get his shot anywhere and nobody else on that team can create shots. So it does make some sense. Like I'm not actually criticizing it, just kind of felt offensive probably be it. Durant's fifth in the league in isolations right now. He's only okay at it. Like he's 0.933 points per. Like Luka's the greatest in the NBA at isolation at 1.1 and Shea's at 1.1 and Joel Embiid's at 1.14 and Paul George, who's on fire right now, is 1.2. Those are the best in the NBA. So Durant's at 0.933, which is, hey, that's really pretty good. Don't misunderstand me. And if we take the top 60 guys who have gone in isolation this year, I guess this is the way I would describe it, is that the top 60 guys in isolation, the best are Dame, Paul George, Steph Curry, Tobias Harris is actually up there, Tatum, the guys you'd expect. You'd expect to see Durant in that group. At 0.933, Durant's right in the middle. He's 30th out of 60 guys in points per chance on isolation. So he's right in the middle of the pack, which is a little lower than you'd anticipate for the 7-1 Durant. And then they're not very good in fourth quarter offense. They just haven't figured it out. So this game obviously has huge ramifications for the play-in. So the tiebreaker is head-to-head. The next tiebreaker is point differential. I got some questions about two things, and then I have a third question that was brilliant. So a question about Draymond. Here's my take on Draymond. He's dirty. As he gets older, he gets dirtier. This is what happens with everyone. As they get older and they get worse, they get dirtier. He's extremely dirty right now because he's losing a step. You're literally watching the fall of his game happen. I also think the players in the league are just tired of him. I think with his media stuff, he's crossed the line and he's talked about all of them too much. And I think they're just disgusted with him. Donovan's at total act of disrespect the other night. Anthony Edwards telling him where to put it. Like, I just think the guys in the league are really, really tired of him. I think they feel the same way about Pat Bev too. So I think, and Pat Bev's getting dirty because he's old. Chris Paul's getting dirty because he's old. When you get old and you've lost a step, you get dirty. Carissa Thompson, the sideline reporter who commented she made up reports. My wife was a sideline reporter for years. She was the first Asian American, I believe, ever on an NFL broadcast. Never. As a reporter myself, who's done sideline reporting and done the equivalent my whole life, never. Don't get some idea that this incredibly, strangely boastful, unintelligent comment from Carissa Thompson, and maybe a bigger indictment on her and who she is some standard by which the rest of us live. It's not. I have never, ever in my entire life, in 30 years of business, ever made up anything anyone's ever said to me and put it on the air. I can promise you that my wife had never did the same thing as a sideline reporter, and that's the standard by which they live. I would have to talk to every other reporter, but I'm pretty certain that most and all of them have not. There is something strangely unique about someone who, one, would do that and two, boast about it. And that should be the story, not an overriding, all-encompassing thing on sideline reporters, on women, or on the media, because none of those are actually accurate. What is accurate is that a single individual became so strangely boastful about her inadequacies as a reporter and ethically as a reporter that she somehow egotistically decided to unintelligently talk about them, which is so bizarre to me. But the bottom line to me is, let me tell you that I have never, ever, ever, ever in 30 years ever made up anything anyone's ever said to me and put it on the air. And I can attest to you that my wife was a longtime sideline reporter and a groundbreaker in that, never did the same. And I'm 98% certain that this is the standard by which all of us live by, because I'm flabbergasted by this comment. So I don't know what drove it, but it's not an indictment on women. It's not an indictment on sideline reporters, and it's not an indictment on the media. It's an indictment on a single, boastful, egotistical, unintelligent individual. Unethical individual who did those things. I want to make that clear. And I want to end with what I just thought was an incredible question that I don't have an answer to. Leah asked me, we've talked about Lowry as a leader. What are other leaders in the league like? I thought that's a great question. I think this is one where we create this myth and narrative about players and their leadership. And then I don't know, like Steph clearly leads by example, by effort. And last year evidently brought the team together and gave kind of a rip-roaring speech about, like, let's get our differences together. That's kind of the traditional leadership. Does Kawhi lead? It doesn't feel like it in LA. Like he's so singular to himself with his outside persona. You know who I actually think probably one of the best leaders in the NBA is? Russell Westbrook. As crazy as that sounds, he plays hard every single night at his max level. All right, I hope this show worked and there's not too many glitches in the middle. If not, I'll try to edit them out. Thank you very much for being a part of Locked On Jazz. Thank you very much for being an everydayer. And now we will send you over to Locked On Sports Today for 24/7 national sports stream, the first to ever be a part of history, and love it. See ya.